Here we are. It is local elections day in Wales 2022, and already there have been a few shocks. Labour seem to be doing quite well. Can't speak for the rest of Wales, but we have Gwynoro Jones. He's been casting his eye over the potential for increases for Labour. We know that people vote very differently from the National Senate elections and the Parliament elections when it comes to county councillors. And that is mainly because county councillors are chosen from the local community where local people know them, and they may not necessarily vote in the same way as they do for their MP or for their member of the Senate. Gwynoro, that's fair to say, isn't it?
Well, it is. Although also people tend to follow national news, and that has an impact. And that certainly has had an impact in England. I've been watching the results this morning in England, and in London, the Conservatives have had quite a hammering.
Yeah.
The Liberal Democrats have made very good advances in England. That's going to be very interesting to see. Can they do that in Wales? Because in England, there's been a resurgence of the Lib Dems and the Greens, as a matter of fact.
If we just look a second, only just one second at Carmarthenshire, right? Di Jenkins, who was Plaid Cymru's main financial man, this guy had a lot of knowledge. He'd made a lot of decisions within the council. Di Jenkins has gone from Glanarmon, and Labour that's a big shock there. Labour take that again with one independent. This new independent group that have come along, they've put so many candidates up. They are splitting the vote. We can see that. Is this going to happen, do you think, in other areas as well of Wales, with Propel and the independents and Lib Dems and the Greens, all these minor parties, if you like? Is this... I know you're not a fan of splitting the vote. I know you're not a fan of the smaller parties because of the damage they do, really.
Well, that's not 100% true, but broadly it's right. I think the key thing, as I was saying, is how will Labour perform in Wales? Will they improve on Labour in England? And if they do that, going to be a move towards back to Labour in Wales. They lost badly in 2017. They lost over 100 councillors in Wales, in Blaenau Gwent, in Bridgend, and Merthyr Tydfil, and some other areas. Now then, what's going to happen this time? If the trend that is happening in England happens in Wales, and I think it might be a stronger trend, then I think Plaid Cymru, some independents, the Conservatives possibly, will be in difficulty in many, many seats.
How big a part do you think then that the Drakeford's 2 years of the pandemic will play now across Wales?
Well, it obviously does, you see. If you look at opinion polls, and reflection really on the election system. You have local elections, but they're actually being fought on UK or Wales-wide issues. The element of the local issue gets submerged far too often. That's been the case ever since I started in politics. The national trend is what? Broadly anti-Johnson, not trustworthy, etc. In Wales, Drakeford is marked down as having had a good year or two in the COVID. The Senedd election showed that. Now, if that trend continues, then there will be difficulties for the other parties. So when you look at Labour, you're looking at, will they make a recovery in Blaenau Gwent, Bridgend and Merthyr Tydfil? How will they do in Carmarthenshire? You know what I mean? Ammanford, Llanelli, the valley, the Gwendraeth and Amman Valley. What will happen in Swansea? There are strong attempts by the Liberal Democrats in certain areas, like the Mayals and Sketty and the Uplands. What's going to happen? I suspect it's going to be a good day in Wales for the Labour Party for the first time in some 10 years in local government.
Very different, though. We've said, really, if you look at it, Wales has outperformed the UK Labour Party completely, hasn't it?
Yes, I think... I was thinking about it earlier in the day, and I spent a lot of time thinking about these things. That's what you do when you reach my age. What Mark Drakeford has done, he's made a specific Welsh identity to the Welsh Labour Party. Now, I used to argue that sort of case in the 60s, 70s and 80s. Mark Drakeford has done it. What's the consequence of that? One big consequence is it puts enormous pressure on Plaid Cymru. Because now many people in Wales would say, well, look, there is this Welsh Labour Party, and Drakeford is clearly a strong Welshman, if you wish to put it in those terms. And I think that is swinging the scene back towards them and putting pressure on Plaid and putting pressure on Adam Price. There are two leaders who are under pressure today, I think. Boris Johnson in England and Adam Price in Wales.
Do you think Adam Price should have stuck at it, being the sort of Rottweiler in the shadows with Mark Drakeford, and kept at it like that? Do you think he's lost a lot of his credibility now in coalition, and really putting out sound bites that are disagreeing with the Welsh Labour government, and it's probably irking a lot of Plaid Cymru and Labour, in fact, with saying, hang on a minute, this guy is capping from the sides here about Welsh government decisions, and yet he is there. He's party to it. They've made a coalition. They've made a pact.
Well, they haven't made a coalition, but they've made an agreement on about 40 areas of policy.
Yeah.
Now, that really ties him down. It's going to be very difficult to criticise about 40 areas of what the Welsh Senedd does and criticise. That's very difficult. The overarching thing always has been. It was why I was against the coalition between the Liberal Democrats and the Tories with Cameron and Clegg. The minor party always loses out in any agreement. And if I had been Adam Price, I would not have done that agreement. I would have remained independent, supporting Labour whenever is sensible, but being able to be free to criticise. That freedom to criticise has gone. And quite frankly, as somebody suggested the other day, what is Plaid Cymru now? Is it a political party, or is it a pressure group in Wales pressurising Labour? That is the dichotomy, that is the dilemma. But, Plaid Cymru are under pressure. The Conservatives too, if we can turn to them, are also in big pressure in Wales. What will happen now in Powys, Ynys Môn, Monmouth, Vale of Glamorgan, in Cardiff, in Swansea? Areas where at the last election, 2017, the Conservatives did very well in Wales, exceptionally well. Now then, they're under threat. What's going to happen to them? And Ynys Môn is obviously a must-watch, as is Wrexham, Bridgend, the Vale of Clwyd, and those areas. It's my hunch is they're going to lose out. I could be eating humble pie when we talk later, mind, Alan?
Yeah.
But my hunch is, if the trend in England continues in Wales, I think the Conservatives are going to have a difficult time today.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that later on. We'll bring you all the results as well from across Wales. And we will obviously take a keen interest in the results in Carmarthenshire as well. Gwynoro, thanks for now.
That's okay.